Welcome, wanderers of the shadowed vale, to another descent into the throne of nightmares. I am your guide through the fog-shrouded corridors of forgotten horrors, where the past doesn't merely linger. It claws its way back, hungry and unrelenting. Tonight we step not into the clamor of cities or the wild frenzy of frontier bloodbaths, but into a place where two great rivers meet like lovers locked in a fatal embrace. The Potomac and the Shenandoah, their waters churning with the silt of old sins, cradle a town that whispers secrets to those foolish enough to listen. Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, 1896, a speck on the map where history bled into legend and legend curdled into nightmare. Imagine it now, if you dare. The year is waning, autumn's chill seeping into the bones of the earth, like grave diggers' fingers probing for purchase. The air hangs heavy, laced with the metallic tang of impending rain and the faint, sweet perfume of decaying leaves piled along cobblestone streets that twist like veins. Harper's Ferry clings to its cliffs, a precarious jewel in the crown of the Appalachians, its clapboard houses huddled against the wind as if fearing the night will swallow them whole. Lanterns flicker in windows like dying eyes, casting long shadows that dance with the ghosts of what once was. The armory where rifles were forged in fire, the raid that ignited a war, the battles that scarred the soul of a nation. But tonight's tale is not of grand rebellions or cannon's roar. No, this is a quieter venom, a poison slipped into the ear like a lover's sigh. It is the story of two sisters, bound by blood, severed by something far darker, who offered shelter to the weary, sustenance to the starving, and in return took more than they gave. They served supper, yes, but it was a meal laced with oblivion, a feast where the guests became the fare. Eliza and Beatrice Hawthorne, the innkeepers of Willow Bend House, a modest boarding establishment perched on the edge of town, where the river's roar drowned out the screams. Oh, how the town spoke of them in hushed tones. Those first whispers carried on the breeze like autumn spores. Kindly souls. The locals would murmur over their own meager suppers, taking in stragglers from the rails, feeding the forgotten. Travelers, salesmen with worn valises, prospectors chasing whispers of gold in the hills, widows seeking solace in the shadow of war, found their way to the sisters' door. The sign creaked in the wind, Willow Bend House warm beds, hot meals, no questions asked, and none asked, not at first, not until the disappearances began. A peddler here, a drifter there, their names fading from ledgers like ink bled by water. The sheriff turned a blind eye, the pastor preached of wandering souls called home by God. But we, dear listeners, know better. We know the truth that was buried deeper than the bones in the sisters' root cellar. A truth silenced by fear, by complicity, by the town's own gnawing hunger for normalcy in a world still raw from the Civil War's wounds. Picture the scene as the sun dips below the Blue Ridge, painting the sky in hues of congealed blood. You stand at the fork of the rivers, the water's surface a mirror cracked by hidden currents. A chill wind tugs at your coat, carrying the faint echo of a woman's laughter, high and brittle, like glass about to shatter. That's when you see it, Willow Bend House, its silhouette jagged against the twilight, willows draping their branches like mourning veils over the porch. Smoke curls from the chimney, promising warmth, but the scent wafts on that wind, rich and savory, with an undernote of iron and earth. Stew, they called it. Rabbit stew, venison, whatever the hunt provided, but hunts in Harper's Ferry were never just for game. This tale, my shadowed kin, was scrubbed from the annals, its pages torn and fed to the flames in some mayor's office, lest it taint the town's fragile rebirth. No newspapers dared print it, no historians catalogued it. Yet it persists, etched in the fever dreams of those who slept under that roof, scratched into the bark of those willows by fingers too weak to hold a pen. It is a story of sisterhood twisted into something profane, of hospitality turned to predation, of a supper that fed not just the body, but the abyss within. As we unravel this thread, feel the fog close in around you. Hear the rivers murmur names long forgotten. And remember, in Harper's Ferry, the past doesn't rest, it serves. Let us begin at the beginning, or as close to it as the darkness allows. It was the spring of 1896 when the Hawthorne sisters arrived, their wagon groaning under the weight of trunks and tragedies. Eliza, the elder at 38, with hair like polished obsidian pinned in a severe bun, her eyes sharp as the arsenal's bayonets that once gleamed in the town square. Beatrice, 4 years her junior, softer in form but no less fierce, her golden curls framing a face that could coax smiles from stones, or secrets from the dying. Orphans of the war, they claimed. Their parents lost to Sherman's march, their inheritance a handful of Confederate scrip, worth less than the paper it was printed on. They bought Willow Bend from a widower fleeing north, his eyes hollow as he handed over the deed. "The land's cursed," he muttered, but the sisters only smiled, their hands cool and steady on the ink. The house itself was a relic of better days, built in the 1840s when Harper's Ferry buzzed with the hum of industry. 3 stories of weathered pine, its gables leaning like weary sentinels, the foundation stones slick with river moss. Inside, the parlor smelled of beeswax and regret, the kitchen a cavern of copper pots and hooks where hams once dangled. Upstairs, 6 rooms with feather beds and lace curtains that fluttered like spectres in the draught. The sisters set to work with a fervor that bordered on mania, Eliza scrubbing floors until they gleamed like bones, Beatrice planting herbs in the garden, rosemary for remembrance, sage for warding off what couldn't be warded. Word spread quickly in a town where secrets traveled faster than the B&O Railroad. The Hawthornes were a godsend, they said, in these lean times after the armory's closure in 664, when jobs evaporated like morning mist and families scraped by on locust bread and pride. For a dime a night, you got a bed, for 2 bits more, a plate of whatever bubbled in the cauldron. And oh, how it bubbled, thick stews laced with thyme and mystery, breads baked golden and crusty, pies with fillings that melted on the tongue like forbidden kisses. Travelers came, and they stayed. Too long, some whispered, but whispers are just wind until they howl. Our hook, dear ones, is this? What if the meal that warmed you was woven from the warmth stolen from another? What if the sisters' kindness was a lure, cast into the river of human desperation, reeling in souls to be gutted and savored? Tonight, we dine on their story. Pull your chair closer to the fire. Lock your doors. And listen, for the first guest arrives on a night when the moon hides its face, and the willows weep black tears into the flood-swollen waters. The rain came that April evening in 1896, like judgment from a weeping sky, sheets of it lashing the cliffs of Harper's Ferry until the rivers frothed in rage. It was the kind of storm that unearthed roots and regrets, washing topsoil into the Potomac where it mingled with the bones of the unburied. Through this deluge rode Jeremiah Cole, a tinsmith from Pittsburgh, his horse a sodden ghost, his valise strapped tight against the downpour. 32 years old, with calloused hands and a mustache waxed to defiance, Jeremiah sought work in the valley's forges, chasing rumors of revival in the armory's shadow. The sign for Willow Bend House appeared like a beacon, or a trap, its lantern swinging wild in the gale, casting erratic pools of gold on the mud-churned path. He tethered his mount under the dripping eaves and pounded the door with a fist that echoed like a drum in a tomb. It opened not with a creak, but a sigh, as if the house itself exhaled in relief. There stood Beatrice, her apron dusted with flour, cheeks flushed from the oven's heat, a smile blooming like nightshade in moonlight. "Mercy, sir, you'll drown out there. Come in, mind the step. It's treacherous." Her voice was honey over gravel, warm as the hearth fire crackling behind her. Jeremiah stepped across the threshold, water pooling at his boots, the scent enveloping him, wood smoke, fresh bread, and something deeper, earthier, like soil turned after a grave's digging. Eliza emerged from the shadows of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a rag stained the color of old blood. Taller than her sister, her posture ramrod straight, she appraised him with eyes the shade of storm clouds. "Evening, traveler. Room for the night? Supper's near ready." "No questions, as promised." Jeremiah nodded, fumbling coins from his pocket. 30 cents, all he could spare. The sisters exchanged a glance, brief as a blink, but in that flicker, something passed a hunger, not for silver, but for the salt of sweat on skin. They led him to the parlor, a room heavy with velvet drapes and a mantel cluttered with porcelain dolls whose eyes followed your every move. Beatrice poured mulled cider, spiced with cinnamon and secrets, while Eliza stoked the fire until flames leaped like imps in the grate. "You've come far?" Beatrice asked, settling into a rocker that groaned under her weight. Jeremiah thawed in the warmth, spinning yarns of Pittsburgh's mills, the clang of hammers forging futures from scrap. The sisters listened, rapt, Beatrice with wide-eyed wonder, Eliza with a nod that masked calculation. "Harper's Ferry's seen its share of forges," Eliza said softly. "But fires go out, men come and go. It's the staying that marks you." Supper was served at a table laid with linen starched to stiffness, candles guttering in brass holders that threw shadows like claws across the walls. The stew arrived first, steaming in a tureen of cracked china, its surface oily and inviting. Chunks of meat bobbed amid carrots and potatoes, tender as a lover's yield. "Venison," Beatrice announced with a wink. "From the hills, fresh as dawn." Jeremiah dove in, the first spoonful bursting with juices that coated his tongue, rich and gamey, with a tang that lingered like regret. Bread followed, slathered in butter churned that morning, and a pie. Apple, they said, though the filling held a darker sweetness, cloves masking something feral. As he ate, the storm outside raged on, lightning etching the sisters' faces in stark relief. Beatrice chattered of town gossip, the new rail spur promising jobs, the pastor's sermons on redemption, the floods that claimed 2 souls last winter. Eliza was quieter, her fork tracing patterns in her untouched plate, her gaze fixed on Jeremiah's throat where his pulse beat steady. "War took much from us," she murmured at last, her voice a thread pulled taut. "Father at anti-item, mother to fever after. Left us to fend, you see. But we fended. Always do." Jeremiah, belly full and eyelids heavy, shared his own scars, a brother lost at Gettysburg, a wife who withered in '92 from the consumption that stalked the slums. The cider flowed, loosening tongues, and soon he was laughing, rare for him, at Beatrice's mimicry of the town drunk, her hands fluttering like moths to flame. But as the clock struck 10, a chill settled, not from the draught, but from within. The fire dimmed unbidden, and the dolls on the mantel seemed to lean forward, their china grins widening. "Bedtime, I think," Eliza said, rising like a shadow uncoiling. She lit a candle and led him upstairs, the stairs protesting each step with creaks that mimicked bones cracking. His room was modest, a 4-poster with quilts patched from feed sacks, a basin of water scented with lavender that did little to mask the underlying damp. "Sleep sound," she whispered at the door, her hand brushing his arm, cool as river stones. "The house watches over its own, alone." Jeremiah stripped to his union suit, the stew sitting heavy in his gut, a warmth that bordered on fever. He dreamed that night, or perhaps it was no dream, rivers running red, willows with faces woven in bark, sisters' hands kneading dough that pulsed like hearts. He woke to birdsong, or so he thought, but the light was wrong, grey and oppressive, the rain unrelenting. Downstairs, breakfast awaited, porridge thick as mud, eggs fried crisp, bacon that sizzled with an unnatural vigor. "Slept well?" Beatrice asked, pouring coffee black as sin. He had, too well. But as he ate, a unease gnawed, sharp as a hook in flesh. His valise, left by the door, felt lighter somehow, though he couldn't say why. The sisters saw him off with packed lunch, more stew wrapped in oilcloth, and promises of return. "Harper's Ferry grows on you?" Eliza called from the porch, her smile a crescent moon. Jeremiah rode on, the rivers at his back, the taste of supper clinging to his teeth like a curse. He was not the first, nor the last. Over the weeks, Willow Bend filled with souls like his. Elias Grant, a surveyor mapping the cliffs, his theodolite left behind when he moved on. Widow Harlan seeking her runaway son, her shawl folded neatly in the linen closet. Young Tobias Reed, a telegraph operator with dreams of California, his wire clippings scattered like confetti from a funeral. Each arrived wary, departed changed, or not at all. The sisters' routine was a ritual, honned like a blade. Mornings Eliza in the garden, spade turning earth black as pitch, unearthing tubers that blood milky sap. Beatrice in the kitchen, knife flashing as she diced and simmered, humming hymns twisted into dirges. Afternoons dusting the parlor, where dust motes danced like spirits in sunbeams that pierced the gloom. Evenings the door opening to new faces, the table set, the stew ladled with hands steady as surgeons, but cracks formed subtle as hairline fractures in porcelain. Old Mrs. Thibodeaux, the seamstress next door, noticed the cats vanishing. One tabby, then the mackerel, their yolls cut short in the night. Something unnatural, she confided to the baker, her fingers twisting lace like rosary beads. The baker scoffed, but his eyes darted to Willow Bend when he passed, the scent of roasting meat turning his stomach. Then came the letter from Pittsburgh for Jeremiah. Undelivered, it lay in the postmaster's drawer, inquiring after a tinsmith gone silent. The postmaster, a veteran with a limp from Chancellorsville, shrugged it off. Folks come, folks go. But sleep evaded him that night, the wind carrying echoes of laughter from the bend. It was May when the first real shadow fell. A storm fiercer than April's, uprooting willows and flooding the basement, where Eliza toiled alone, her skirts muddied, hauling crates of salted meat that sloshed with more than brine. Beatrice found her there, soaked and shivering, a crate splintered open to reveal provisions, yes, but pale and veined, wrapped in cheesecloth-stained ochre. "Sister," Beatrice breathed, her face ashen. Eliza's laugh was a rasp. "West not, want not. War taught us that." They embraced then in the fated dark, the water lapping at their ankles like tongues. But in Beatrice's eyes, doubt flickered, a spark in the tinder of their bond. For the stew that night tasted different, sharper, and the guest, a railman named O'Leary, chewed slower, his brow furrowing. "What's this meat, ma'am?" "Toughened boot leather." Beatrice's smile faltered. "Just mutton, sir, from the market in Charlestown." But Eliza's hand tightened on the ladle, knuckles white as bone. O'Leary slept, but not soundly. In the witching hour, he stirred to footsteps in the hall, soft, deliberate, like thieves in the night. He cracked his door, candle in hand, and saw them, the sisters, descending the stairs arm in arm, Eliza carrying a lantern that swung like a pendulum, Beatrice with a bundle over her shoulder, heavy and limp. They slipped into the kitchen, the door latching with a click that echoed like a coffin nail. Curiosity, that serpent in the garden, uncoiled in O'Leary's chest. He followed, barefoot on cold planks, heart hammering a dirge. Through the keyhole, the scene unfolded, the cauldron bubbling anew, flames leaping blue, Eliza's knife parting flesh with precision born of practice. Beatrice whispered prayers or pleas, her hands trembling as she chopped onions to mask the scent. For us, Eliza. For survival. The railman's blood ran cold, not from the draft, but from the realization crashing like thunder the bundle was no sack of flour. It was man, or what remained. Elias Grant, perhaps, or the widow's boy, their forms reduced to sustenance. O'Leary stumbled back, retching silently, the stew's aftertaste now bile in his throat. Dawn found him fleeing, horse saddled in haste, Willow Bend shrinking in the mist. He rode to the sheriff, words tumbling like floodwater sisters. Murder, cannibals' feast. The sheriff, portly and pious, listened with a pipe clenched in yellow teeth. Fanciful Mr. O'Leary, storm fever, I'd wager. The Hawthorns are fine Christian women. But doubt seeded. Patrols increased, eyes lingered on the house. The sisters felt it, the town's gaze sharpening like a noose tightening. They doubled their charms, baskets of bread to the poor, hymns sung at St. Peter's, Eliza's donations to the Veterans Fund. Beatrice's laughter rang brighter, but her nights were sleepless, dreams plagued by faces in the stew, eyes staring from carrots. June brought heat, the kind that baked secrets into the soil. Travelers thinned, whispers thickened. A drifter named Silas Crow arrived, grizzled and wary, a Pinkerton man moonlighting as a bounty hunter. He checked in under false pretenses, eyes scanning corners like a hawk. Supper was subdued, the stew thinner, but Silas ate little, claiming dyspepsia. That night, as lightning forked the sky, he crept down, revolver in hand. The basement door yielded to his pick. Hinges silent as sin. Torchlight revealed Horus hooks dangling empty, jars of preserves glowing amber fingers. Ears. Shelves of smoked cuts wrapped in paper yellowed with age. And in the corner, a grate over a pit, where the river seeped in, carrying the town's refuse. Silas gagged, the air thick with brine and decay. Footsteps above, soft, but not soft enough. He retreated, but not before pocketing a scrap, a monogrammed cufflink. Elias Grant's, glinting like accusation. Confrontation came at breakfast, the table a battlefield of porcelain and pretense. Ladies, Silas drawled, cufflink clinking on his saucer. Care to explain this? Beatrice gasped, hand to mouth, but Eliza's face was stone. A trinket, nothing more. Lost property. Silas leaned in, voice low as grave dirt. Lost or harvested. The air thickened, the river's roar distant thunder. Beatrice's eyes darted to Eliza, pleading. We had no choice. The war took everything. The land gives back what it takes. Eliza rose, knife in hand, not the carving blade, but the paring one, small and wicked. Survival, Mr. Crow, you've no idea the taste of it. The struggle was brief, brutal. Silas's revolver barking once, wild in the scuffle, shattering a window. Eliza lunged, the blade finding purchase in his thigh, hot blood spraying like rain. Beatrice screamed not in fear, but fury, grabbing the poker from the hearth. Silas fell, gasping, the sisters upon him like furies. When the sheriff arrived hours later, summoned by a neighbor's report of gunfire, he found Silas Crow bound in the parlor, gagged with his own cravat, the sisters serene over tea. Self-defense, Eliza explained coolly. He attacked us, raving of thieves in the night. The Pinkerton man was carted to Charlestown jail, his claims dismissed as delirium from a gut-shot fever. But the cufflink vanished, and with it the fragile peace. Summer waned, the sisters' bond fraying like rope in flood. Beatrice, haunted by visions, faces in the foam of the Potomac, hands reaching from the willows, begged mercy. No more, Eliza. We're damned enough. Eliza's eyes hardened, mirrors to the abyss. Damned, we're alive, sister. That's grace enough. And so the cycle turned, the door opening to the next weary soul, the stew simmering anew. But the town watched, the rivers whispered, and the silence that would bury this tale was yet to come. Autumn crept into Harper's Ferry like a thief in widow's weeds, stripping leaves from the willows until their branches clawed the sky bare. The air turned crisp, laced with wood smoke and the faint, acrid bite of fear. Willow Bend House stood defiant, its windows glowing amber against the encroaching dusk, a siren call to those adrift on the C&O Canal or the B&O line. But the guests now came sparse, wary, their footsteps hesitant on the path. Whispers had metastasized, the sisters serve more than supper. They serve you. Inside, the harmony fractured. Beatrice paced the kitchen at night, her golden curls unkempt, shadows pooling in the hollows of her cheeks. The dreams worsened, stews bubbling with eyes that blinked, forks piercing tongues that writhed. She'd wake gasping, the taste of copper on her lips, and find Eliza watching from the doorway, her silhouette a blade in the moonlight. Sleep, B, Eliza would murmur, her voice a lullaby laced with arsenic. The house provides, but provision came at a cost. The root cellar, once a larder of jars and hams, now echoed with ghosts. Sacks of flour sagged heavy, stained dark. Hooks bore faint scratches like pleas carved in desperation. The sisters' argument simmered beneath civility, erupting in the quiet hours. That railman saw too much. Beatrice hissed one dawn, as she scrubbed blood from the flagstones. O'Leary's echo, or another's. "We can't keep this." The pastor's asking questions at market. Eliza's laugh was a whipcrack. Questions. Let him ask the rivers. They've swallowed worse. She seized Beatrice's wrist, nails digging crescents. Remember, Pa, gutted on that field. Ma. Coughing blood into her handkerchief. We survived them? We'll survive this? Beatrice wrenched free, tears carving tracks through flour dust. Survival. This is damnation, Eliza. We're no better than the Rebs who burned our home, taking lives to fill our bellies. The words hung, venomous, until Eliza's face crumpled, not in rage, but raw grief. She pulled her sister close, the embrace fierce, bodies trembling in unison. "Then damn us together," she whispered. Blood to blood, yet the house betrayed them. No, not betrayed. Hungered. The willows tapped windows like fingers begging entry. The basement flooded not with rain, but seepage red as rust, carrying flotsam that bobbed like mementos a boot buckle. A locket with a miniature face faded to scream. Guests sensed it now, the parlor's dolls whispering in tongues, the stairs groaning under invisible weight. One night, a schoolteacher named Lydia Voss checked in, her carpetbag heavy with Hawthorne family Bible. Ironic, that, and folios of poetry. Supper was subdued bread and cheese, the stew withheld as spoiled by heat. But Lydia, sharp-eyed and scholarly, noted the sister's pallor, the way Eliza's hands trembled on the teapot. Charming place, Lydia ventured, sipping chamomile that steamed with phantom herbs, though the town's abuzz with tales. Disappearances, they say, travelers vanishing like mist. Beatrice's cup rattled, Eliza smiled. Thin as sickle moon. Folklore, Miss Voss. Harper's Ferry's full of it. John Brown's ghost pacing the fort. Soldiers marching in the fog. Pay no mind, but Lydia minded. In the small hours, insomnia her old companion, she wandered the hall, candle flickering, a door ajar, the sister's room, spilled light and murmurs. She peered, heart a-drummers at a desk, ledger open, entries meticulous coal, J. 510 and FUD 60 Libby's arrived 4012, served 4015. Beatrice knelt, rosary beads clicking in tuning, forgive us, for we hungo. Lydia fled to her room, barricading with a chair, but sleep evaded. Dawn brought pounding at her door, not the house, but the sheriff, bumbling and apologetic.
Miss Voss, folks heard a ruckus.
Everything shipshape. She dressed in haste, fleeing without breakfast, her folio clutched like shield. At the station, she wired associates Harper's Ferry anomaly. Investigate Hawthorne sisters. Possible foul play. The wire sparked, but lines tangled in storm static, the message garbled to oblivion. The sisters learned of it from the postmaster's loose tongue, over a basket of scones. Nosy sort, that teacher. Best watch your step. Eliza's eyes narrowed to slits. We always do. October deepened the chill, All Hallows' Eve looming like executioner's hood. The harvest moon rose bloated, bathing the rivers in silver that mocked the blood beneath. A caravan arrived then, unlucky stars, a troop of mummers from Baltimore. 5 souls in motley, fiddler, juggler, 2 dancers and their manager, gaunt as grim spectre. Room for performers. The manager, Mr. Finch, inquired, his troop shivering in threadbare cloaks. Beatrice, ever the soft heart, nodded. Plenty. Supper's on. The meal was a masterpiece of deception, pheasant pie, or so claimed, potatoes mashed silken, wine mulled to forgetfulness. The mummers entertained post-feast, the parlor alive with fiddles, wail and laughter that chased shadows. But Eliza watched, her mind a millstone grinding plans. Such vitality, she murmured to Beatrice. Wasted on roads. That night, the house feasted. The troop bedded in the attic, lulled by opium-laced tea. In the basement, the sisters worked in tandem, blades singing through flesh, the cauldron hissing welcome. But hubris breeds haste. The fiddler's bow, left in the parlor, bore initials. T. Rayleigh, and a strand of red hair caught in the juggler's pins. Come morning, 2 remained, the dancers, pale and vomiting, claiming egg. The others took ill, wandered off for air. Finch lied, his eyes darting. The sheriff, tipped by a stable boy, arrived with deputies, badges glinting like false halos. Searched the premises, he barked, though his voice quavered. The parlor yielded nothing, the rooms, empty beds. But the basement? The basement, flooded ankle deep. The great pride open revealed the horror, limbs tangled in weeds, faces bloated by water, the mummer's finery shredded like confetti in blood. Beatrice collapsed, wailing, God forgive! Eliza stood defiant, knife in hand. They came willing. The house it demands. The arrest was chaos, deputies retching, the sheriff's revolver drawn but trembling. The town converged, lanterns bobbing like willow, the wisps, murmurs swelling to roar.
Cannibals! Witches! Old missus!
Thibodeaux spat at their feet, her missing cats avenged. Trial came swift in Charlestown courthouse, the air thick with tobacco and terror. Witnesses piled O'Leary, recovered and raging, Lydia Voss, her wire reconstructed, Silas Crow limping on crutch, cufflink exhibited like relic. The ledger seized from Eliza's desk, read like apocalypse, dates, weights, yields, Grant, E' 8 lbs rendered. The sisters, chained but unbowed, faced the bench. Beatrice wept, confessing all the first kill. A debtor who threatened eviction. His body, disposed, in desperation, the stew born of famine's grip. It sustained us, she sobbed. Then it consumed us. Eliza, unrepentant, spun a web of war's madness, fields of boys bayoneted, rivers choked with corpses. We learned hunger there. The house it remembers. Calls to us, the jury, veterans all, averted eyes. Guilty on counts of murder manifold. Sentence hanging at dawn, December's bite. But silence descended like frost. The mayor, kin to the sheriff, quashed the papers. Scandal enough from Brown. Let sleeping horrors lie. The execution was private, the rope snapped, muffled by gales. Bodies buried unmarked in Potter's Field. Willows transplanted to mark the grave, ironic ward. Willow Bend burned that night, arson whispered, flames devouring ledgers and lace. The rivers claimed the ash, but echoes lingered, stews in dreams, sisters' laughter on wind. Yet some say they never left. Travellers still vanish, suppers served in spectral inns, Harper's Ferry slumbers uneasy, the throne of nightmares ever hungry, to grasp the Hawthorne sisters' tale. Be it fevered fiction or festering truth, one must plunge into the mire of Harper's Ferry's history, a town forged in confluence and conflict, where the Potomac and Shenandoah's kiss birthed both bounty and bedlam. Founded in 1747 by Robert Harper, who purchased squatters' rights for a ford that promised passage but delivered peril. Harper's Ferry evolved from colonial outpost to industrial heart, its armory established in 1799 under George Washington's gaze, churning muskets and rifles that armed revolutions and repressions alike. By 1859, the town's powder keg status ignited with John Brown's raid, a quixotic bid to seize the armory, arm enslaved masses, and spark abolition's blaze. Brown's October assault, bold as it was doomed, ended in capture, his execution a martyr's crown that polarized the nation, tipping dominoes to civil war. Harper's Ferry, that strategic nexus, changed hands 8 times in the war. Union blue clashing Confederate gray and fields slick with gore, the cliffs echoing mini balls and moans. Floods compounded carnage, memorable deluges in 1862 and 1870 inundated Lower Town, drowning livestock and legacies, unearthing mass graves where shallow burials yielded to current. West Virginia's 1863 secession from Virginia, birthed in loyalty to Union, left Harper's Ferry scarred yet resilient, its armory dismantled post-war, federal troops torching machinery to deny rebels rebirth. By 1896, the year our tale ferments, the town languished in Reconstruction's hangover, population dwindled to under 300, economy gutted by armory's ghost, railroads snaking through but siphoning souls to brighter horizons. Floods persisted, 1889's torrent claiming lives and livelihoods. The river's wrath, a biblical reminder of hubris at the ford. Poverty gnawed, families foraged, ramps and pawpaws. Boarding houses like Willow Bend sprouted to snare transient trade, salesmen, surveyors, widows adrift on widows' pensions meager as dust. Culturally, Harper's Ferry stewed in folklore's cauldron, its cliffs cradling Celtic echoes from Scots, Irish settlers who fled Ulster's famines, bringing tales of banshees and bean nigh, washerwomen at fords foretelling doom by scrubbing bloodied shrouds. The raid amplified myths. Brown's fort, that squat engine house, birthed specters. His abolitionist shade pacing parapets, rifle phantom, clutched, or Hayward shepherd. The free black victim haunting tracks with lantern swings. St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church, consecrated 1830s. Harper's father Michael Burns' ghost, the Irish priest slain in 1861 skirmish, his footfalls echoing nave at vespers, chalice levitating in candle glow. Broader Appalachian lore infuses unease. The region's post-war trauma birthed haint, tales, restless spirits bound by unfinished bloodwork. Harper's house, Robert's homestead, teems with Mary Harper's apparition, her silk rustle preceding chills or soldiers' murmurs in attic beams. Camp Hill's cemetery, graves askew from floods, yields orbs and EVPs on investigations. Disembodied pleas for water ironic in deluge-prone vale. Even Mothman, that crimson harbinger from Point Pleasant lore, Echo's distant kin, winged omens tied to bridges and betrayals, though Harper's hauntings skew terrestrial, disappearing drifters, perhaps fodder for the sisters' pot, mirroring real vanishings in rail, era transients lost to hollows. The cannibal motif, macabre thread in our narrative, roots in cultural scars, wars, sieges, Vicksburg's starvation, Andersonville's atrocities, spawned rumors of flesh markets, soldiers consuming comrades in extremis. Postbellum South, famine's shadow lingered in Appalachia, long hunger. Folklore warned of flesh-eaters in lean winters, families driven to unspeakable by isolation. Harper's Ferry's floods unearthed actual Horace 1889's deluge, exposed Civil War shallow graves, limbs entangled in debris, fueling tales of river feasters, yells dredging drowned for banquets. The Sisters Inn evokes real establishments. The 1890s saw boarding houses proliferate amid rail boom, but scandals simmered, poisonings for inheritances, bodies dumped in Potomac, hushed by corrupt constables shielding tourism's facade. Silencing fits the era's veil-gilded age press, beholden to boosters, buried scandals to lure investment. Harper's Ferry, rebranding as historical gem, suppressed war's festering wounds, Brown's legacy sanitized, ghosts romanticized on ghost tours nascent even then. Women like the Hawthorns, war orphans, economically adrift, embodied era's dread, spinsters wielding domesticity as weapon there, kindness, a mask for autonomy's rage in patriarchal rubble. Folklore blends here eerily. The Screaming Jenny, a Point Pleasant parallel, tells of a woman immolated in a train wreck, her shrieks haunting rails, echo in sisters' wails. Or Headless Haunts, Civil War decapites roaming, kin to butchered guests. Educational yet eerie, this context unveils authenticity's chill. Harper's Ferry wasn't mere backdrop. It was crucible, rivers washing sins, but never clean, history's banquet ever half-cooked, serving more than supper to those who dig. Beneath the Hawthorne sisters' visceral atrocity lurks a labyrinth of symbols, a psychological morass where human frailty festers into monstrosity. Their tale, silenced yet seeping, mirrors universal fears, the devouring maw of survival, the corrosion of kinship, the domestic hearth as hellmouth. In Harper's Ferry's crucible, these threads weave a tapestry of cultural trauma, post-war psychosis, and the primal hunger that unites us in dread. Symbolically, the sisters embody duality's fracture. Nurturers turned necrophages, their inner perverted Eden, where hospitality inverts to horror. Willow Bend House stands as domestic Gothic archetype, facade of lace and lamplight, cloaking basement abattoir, evoking Poe's Osher or Du Maurier's Manderley, where home devours inhabitants. The rivers converging in eternal churn symbolize inexorable fate. Potomac's federal flow clashing Shenandoah's wild rebel rush, birthing the sisters' hybrid sin. Floods recur as purgation motif, washing graves, unearthing crimes, yet perpetuating cycle. Much as war's deluges drowned but didn't cleanse national guilt. Psychologically, the narrative probes trauma's alchemy, transmuting grief to gore. Eliza and Beatrice, war orphans, internalize Antietam and Sherman's scorch as void. Hunger not mere caloric but existential, a black hole where love once bloomed. Their cannibalism ritualizes this consuming victims, reclaims agency, flesh as power inverting victimhood. Freudian lens reveals oral stage regression, teeth on taboo, devouring father, land that devoured them. Yet Jungian shadows deepen. Sisters as animo split, Beatrice's soft empathy warring Eliza's armored ed, their bond a syzygy twisted to codependent carnage. Universal fears coalesce here, the stranger at the gate, whom we feed yet fear will feed on us. In 1896 America, immigrant swells and rail nomads embodied this, the author, as threat or prey echoing nativist panics. The supper, that communal rite, perverts to Eucharist inverted body and blood not Christ's, but everyman's satirizing Puritan suppers where grace masked gluttony. Culturally, it indicts Southern Gothic's banquet tradition, Faulkner's Compson's, O'Connor's Misfits, where meals expose moral rot, postbellum South gorging on its own decay. Human nature's underbelly gleams, complicities creep. The town, averting eyes, mirrors Milgram's obedience or Zimbardo's prison. Sheriff's denial, mayor's hush, a collective amnesia shielding fragile identity. War's trauma lingers, PTSD unnameable then, manifesting in soldier's heart, where veterans like the jury, haunted by cannibal rumors from camps, project absolution onto silence. The sisters' unrepentance indicts repressed feminine rage, widows and spinsters, economically entombed, wielding cleaver as phallus, subverting Victorian angel in house to avenging harpy. Thematically, it interrogates survival's cost, Darwinian adapt or perish, curdled to atrocity, where famine's logic devours ethics, post-Civil War. Appalachia's isolation amplified this, hollows as crucibles forging folkloric fiends, from Melungeon's cannibal kin myths to Hatfield, McCoy feuds, rumored flesh feasts, universal trauma binds, Holocaust survivors, grey zones, where victims perpetrate to endure, echo sisters, waste not. Lingering question, are we not all potential hawthorns, one lean season from the pot? Ominous intellect yields this, the tale haunts because it hungers still, a psychological poltergeist rattling our veneers. In devouring the other we consume self, mirrors in the stew, faces in the foam. Harper's Ferry, throne of such nightmares, reminds history's not past, it's plated waiting, and so wanderers the fog lifts from Willow Bend, but the chill remains, seeping into your marrow like river water through cracked stone. The Hawthorne sisters, sisters no more, but shades entwined, dangled from that scaffold in December's merciless grip, their necks snapping like dry twigs under frost. The town watched from afar, breaths held as bodies twisted in the wind, faces purpled masks of defiance and despair. Buried in unmarked soil, their graves now overgrown with those transplanted willows, roots delving deep to drink from the very veins they spilled. Willow Bend House crumbled to ash, its timbers carted for kindling, lest the walls whisper accusations to new owners. Harper's Ferry moved on, or so it pretended, rails humming with progress, tourists gawking at Brown's Fort, oblivious to the supper served in shadows. But you, my haunted flock, know the lie. The tale, silenced by ink and indifference, refuses oblivion. It bubbles up in dreams. The ladle scraping cauldron's bottom, the meat that yields too easily, the laughter of sisters echoing in empty halls. Did they act alone, driven by war's orphaning madness? Or did the house call them, that confluence of currents, carrying Civil War wraiths, demanding tribute in flesh? The rivers keep counsel, their waters murky with silt and secrets, washing bones to light but never yielding names. Tonight, as you douse your lantern and seek your bed, pause at the threshold. Smell the air. Is it bread baking or something richer, iron-tanged? Feel the floorboards creak footsteps or settling of a house that hungers still. The sisters served more than supper. They served reminder that in every warm hearth flickers the potential pyre, every shared meal a pact with the abyss. Harper's Ferry endures, a scar on the land inviting you to trace its lines, to taste its tales. Will you visit daredevils? Stroll the bend at dusk, when willows weep and lanterns sway. Listen for the sigh of a door unlatched, the bubble of a pot long cold, and if a sign appears, warm beds, hot meals, no questions asked, turn away, or don't. For in the throne of nightmares, curiosity is the first bite. Sleep lightly, kin. The fog returns at dawn,